After studying this module, you shall be able to define the term stress, describe the meaning of worker well-being, know the nature of stress, analyze the facets of worker well-being and stress, and identify the sources of stress. The human biology has evolved in a manner so as to have developed a natural chemical response to a threat or demand, commonly known as the flight or fight reaction, wherein the body makes a decision as to stay and fight or to run to evade the danger. This response of the body involves the release of adrenaline. Once the threat or demand is over, the body naturally returns to its normal state so as to conserve its resources. With the evolution of civilized society, the nature of threats modified, but the bodily mechanism which evolved over centuries remains the same. Any factor in the external environment that triggers the flight or fight reaction is known as a stressor. The body's physiological response to the stressor is termed as the stress, which might result in strain if the exposure to the stressor prolongs or the physiological response of the body escalates to the level where the bodily resources start depleting. In the contemporary world, the competitive work lives have provided a set of different kinds of threats altogether. These threats or excessive demands from the work lives of people in the organizational setup have given rise to occupational stress. This particular module deals with the basic concepts related to occupational stress and worker well-being. Occupational stress, its basic nature, definition and its meaning. Occupational stress is also known as job stress. It arises from the kind of job an individual has or the demands which the job puts on the individual. A number of factors give rise to stressful conditions in the work lives of employees, which ultimately require attention from the individual involved as well as the management if the situation is serious. A few definitions of occupational stress or job stress have been described. Firstly, the definition which was given by Beer and Newman 1978. According to them, job stress is a condition arising from the people and their jobs and characterized by the changes within people that force them to deviate from their normal functioning. According to World Health Organization in 1986, they defined occupational stress or work-related stress as the response people may have when presented with work demands and pressures that are not matched to their knowledge and abilities and which challenge their ability to cope. Another definition given by M. Westman in 2005, according to him, job stress arises when demands exceed abilities, while job-related strains are the reactions or outcomes resulting from the experience of stress. Now coming to the nature of stress. First, stress is neutral. The term stress in itself is neutral. It can't be assumed that the outcome or experience of stress will always be undesirable. There are instances in which the stress is a direct or indirect result of unpleasant events such as a poor performance appraisal, a reprimand from the boss, etc. In such conditions, stress is definitely undesirable and the experience of stress is unpleasant. On the other hand, there are situations which are pleasant in themselves but produce some amount of stress nevertheless. For example, a promotion, relocation, etc. These events result in positive stress. Therefore, stress is neutral in itself and can assume pleasant or unpleasant facets. Secondly, stress is highly pervasive. Stress has become all pervasive in today's world. Not only the work life, but the other aspects of life are also impacted by stress. The contemporary world of corporate houses is far more competitive, achievement-oriented, and change-driven as compared to the older times. As a result, the life has become fast-paced and constantly changing. These and many other similar factors have made stress undesirable. Third, stress is associated with constraints and demands. Stress is closely related to the constraints experienced by an individual as well as the demands placed on him or her. Constraints limit an individual's performance to average or below average level, which produces stress. Excessive demands, which put a lot of pressure on the individual, are also responsible for stress. Fourth, potential stress is different from actual stress. Some people fail to distinguish between what is a potential stress and what is actual stress. Potential stress converts into actual stress if there is uncertainty over the outcome and the outcome itself is important. Both these conditions are necessary for actual stress. If either of them is absent, it will not result in stress. The fifth is stress is different from anxiety. Stress is not simply anxiety. Anxiety is just one of the many physiological and emotional reactions which accompany stress. But the two terms are not synonymous. Stress results in anxiety over time. Sixth, stress is closely related to burnout. There is a close association between stress and burnout. Although the two are not synonymous, they are sometimes used interchangeably. Excessive stress experienced over long periods of time result in burnout, which involves emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and diminished personal achievements. Seventh, stress is desirable in moderate quantity. Human beings perform well at moderate levels of stress. If the stress is too low, the person might not be motivated to work. On the other hand, if the stress is too high to handle, the person might fail to perform altogether. In both the cases, performance takes a hit. Therefore, a moderate amount of stress is desirable for optimum performance. Eighth, stress is situational. Stress originates as a result of specific situations in which the individuals face excessive demands or pressure from the external environment. As a result, the flight or fight reaction begins. As soon as the situation passes, the stress levels decline and the individual comes back to normal physiological state. Distress and eustress. Stress is not always negative or unpleasant. Some people have a high tolerance for stress, while others have a low tolerance. Depending on the personal disposition, the level of stress might prove to be either pleasant or unpleasant. People with high tolerance for stress require a certain amount of stress to perform well. For them, this stress is desirable. Therefore, stress can be categorized into two. First is eustress. The term eustress was first proposed by an endocrinologist, Hans Selle. The word eustress is made up of a combination of two parts. The prefix eu is derived from the Greek word meaning either well or good. Therefore, eustress literally means good stress. Eustress is good in the sense that it is healthy and desirable. It is actually a positive and developmental stress response. It is the pleasant side of the stress which arises from positive and good events. For example, if an individual is offered a long-awaited promotion which requires him or her to relocate to a different city, it would be a welcoming news, but will also accompany some degree of stress, though this stress will not be undesirable. This means that eustress is not explained in terms of the kind of stressor an individual is experiencing, but rather how that stressor is subjectively perceived by him or her. One and the same stressor might be perceived as a threat by one, while as an opportunity by the other. In other words, the same stressor is capable of eliciting different responses from different individuals. One who perceives the stressor as an opportunity will show a positive response. Eustress refers to this very positive response one has to a stressor, which can depend on one's current feelings of control, sense of purpose and desirability. Second is distress. Distress is the opposite of eustress. Distress is what can be called the bad stress. Distress usually has negative implications and is related to undesirable events in a person's life. Distress is the persistent stress that is not resolved through coping or adaptation, which leads to unpleasant physiological and emotional responses like anxiety, withdrawal, and depressive behavior. Distress is a direct or indirect result of negative and undesirable events like loss of a family member or demotion at work. These events are distressing in the true sense of the word and produce unhappiness and dissatisfaction in the sufferer. Such events elicit a negative stress response known as the distress. Distress is known to result in deterioration in one's functioning. It adversely affects the productivity and performance level, along with unpleasant bodily experiences such as the anxiety. That is why it is called the bad stress. Both eustress and distress are differentiated on the basis of the individual perception of the stressor and not on the stressor itself. Therefore, it is believed that the same stressor may cause both eustress as well as distress. Some sort of differentiation between the two is essential because these two stress responses essentially exist in the form of a continuum. Their relative impact on the performance of an individual has been shown by the Yerkes-Dodson model of 1908. This model demonstrates the optimum balance of stress with a bell-shaped curve. As seen in the figure, a moderate amount of stress is actually essential for achieving one's full potential and to perform at one's highest capability. On the contrary, very low as well as very high levels of stress are both very detrimental to good performance. Role of personality. Personality of a human being is the most dominant characteristic which influences their decision making in daily life. It is a combined outcome of a person's values, attitudes, and behavior patterns. Personality influences to what extent an individual is able to handle the onslaught of life. Personality makes every individual unique and hence also decides the level of tolerance of stress as demonstrated by an individual. Some people are naturally more dispositional to handle stress with ease, while others are unable to take even the slightest bit of stress. Theorists have come up with two different types of personality which explain how an individual is likely to respond to stress. First is type A personality. Type A personality is characterized by an uneasiness and haste experienced on a constant basis. Type A individuals are always on the go and always looking for one thing to do or the other. In other words, they are restless, competitive, high demanding, and aggressive. They are usually high achievers and refuse to relax in order to achieve more and more within the shortest possible time. They are highly ambitious and set high goals for themselves as well as for the others. Such personality characteristics make them more prone to stress as compared to other personality types. The second is type B personality. In contrast to type A personality, type B personality individuals are relaxed and take life as it comes. They are calm and relaxed. They are not as highly ambitious as the type A personality individuals. These characteristics make them naturally less at risk of experiencing or creating stress for themselves. Therefore, it can be easily stated that the role of personality in an individual's proneness to stress as well as his or her appraisal of the stressor can't be neglected. This in turn defines the kind of response the individual produces in a stressful situation. Now coming to worker well-being, let's see the definition and the meaning of worker well-being. Well-being is a broad term that encompasses health and wellness. It is essentially an umbrella term which covers more than physical health. A few definitions of worker well-being I would like to tell you all. Grant et al. In 2007 defined worker well-being as the overall quality of an employee's experience and functioning at work. Another definition given by the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development 2006, according to them, creating an environment to promote a state of contentment which allows an employee to flourish and achieve their full potential for the benefit of themselves and their organization is known as worker well-being. Another definition given by Martin Seligman in 2011, according to him, worker well-being is the positive emotion, engagement, meaning, positive relationships and accomplishment. From these definitions, it can be inferred that well-being is nothing but a state of an individual which is described in terms of not only good health or wellness, but also by comfort and satisfaction derived from one's work life. Well-being is a cumulative experience of life, that is, a qualitatively desirable life. However, well-being is not a constant state of being. It is variable and depends upon the changes in the individual's conditions or circumstances, including their work context. Therefore, worker well-being deals with a number of dimensions, including work life as well as non-work life. Now let's talk about nature of worker well-being. Firstly, well-being is about the positive functioning. Well-being deals with what some call thriving or flourishing of the employee, rather than the traditional focus on ill health and poor functioning. In a major shift of focus from historical times, worker well-being now lays emphasis on the idea that just an acceptable and stable level of functioning is not enough. Rather, the employees are capable of attaining much higher levels of physical and mental functioning, which is a part of worker well-being. The emphasis of contemporary advocates of well-being is not on the absence of something, example health, but on the achievement of a positive state of being variously described as thriving or flourishing. Second, well-being covers all aspects, be it physical, mental, emotional, and social. Worker well-being is not just restricted to the work aspect of individual functioning. Instead, it includes all the following factors like: first is physical or physiological, which deals with the sound physical health and bodily functioning, adequate exercise and good nutrition, sufficient mobility, physical safety, and access to good health care. Second, mental and psychological, which deals with the soundness of mind, mental alertness and activity at work, opportunities provided at work to express one's creative side and fostering the innovative ideas. Third is emotional, which deals with the emotional satisfaction derived out of work, feeling self-confidence and self-esteem, a sense of achievement in the right direction, and positive self-worth. Fourth, social. It deals with positively contributing to the social relationships, sense of belongingness and acceptance. Third, it includes organizational and societal factors. Well-being does not only relate to the organizational factors, but it also has to do with the extra-organizational and other societal factors. These might include those factors which have any influence on the employee's ability to function at the best of their capability, organizational and beyond the individual's control. Fourth, it includes work life and home life. Though the term under discussion here is worker well-being, it nevertheless includes the influence of the individual's home life along with that of their work lives. Fifth, it is multidimensional. Worker well-being is multidimensional in the sense that well-being may prove challenging to define. Different sources of literature emphasize a variety of aspects associated with the overall concept of worker well-being. Hence, there is no single way of defining it. In other words, different corporations define it differently and design the worker well-being programs and policies in accordance with a wide range of dimensions. Coming to the sources of stress. Sources of stress are known as stressors. Stressors can be categorized in a number of ways, but the stressors leading to occupational stress are broadly classified in the 4 categories as presented. First is extra-organizational stressors, second is organizational stressors, third is group stressors, and the fourth is individual stressors. I'll explain you all, each of them one by one. Extra-organizational stressors. When we talk about extra-organizational stressors, these are those stressors which lay outside the organization but are nevertheless capable of producing stress in the work lives of employees. These are usually associated with the external environment of the organization. Major stressors in this category are, first can be globalization. Globalization has resulted in tremendous changes in the way people now work. With its advent, new challenges appeared on the scene which required a high degree of change and flexibility. Thus, globalization is a major source of stress. Second can be techno-change. Technology has developed with a very fast pace, and the employees are expected to keep up with this fast change if they have to achieve their goals. This overload of information and technology has resulted in what is called techno-stress. Third is economic and financial conditions. Global economy and financial health of workers is a major concern for all the organizations. These are highly uncertain in today's times due to volatile economic conditions, which in turn adversely affect the job security amongst the workforce. Therefore, economic and financial conditions can produce immense stress. The fourth is political factors. Political factors are likely to cause stress in situations where political uncertainties influence the work scenario. Peaceful and stable political conditions foster the growth of economy, and the absence of same results in total chaos and stress. The fifth is the family. Family is an extra organizational factor which can create stressful situations for an employee. For example, disturbance due to conflict in the family might be brought to the workplace if the employee is unable to handle them. Now coming to the second kind of stressors is the organizational stressors. Organizational stressors are those factors which result in occupational stress from within the organization. These can be modified or mitigated by the management of the organization through a number of measures. Number one, job-related stressors. Job-related stressors include work overload, hazardous working conditions, erratic work timings and boring nature of job. Absence of job security and excessive demands placed on an individual by the work are also major job-related stressors. Second organizational stressors is role-related stressors. Role-related stressors have to do with the role which an individual plays within the organization. Major role-related stresses experienced at work include role ambiguity, role overload, role conflict, role erosion, etc. The third is interpersonal relationships. Absence of amicable interpersonal relationships at work also acts as an organizational stressor. Fourth is organizational culture. Stressors related to the organizational culture include poor communication, inadequate leadership, lack of clarity about organizational objectives and the structure. Fifth is lack of participation and control. If an individual experiences an absence of sufficient participation within the organizational decision making, it results in the feeling of lack of control. This feeling in turn works as a stressor in itself. The sixth is work-family interface. When an individual fails to strike a balance between family and work lives and ends up neglecting one because of the other, it serves as a stressor. Third kind of stressor is the group stressors. Group stressors are a result of poor interpersonal relationships or conflicts within the organization. Some of them are: first, lack of group cohesiveness. Group cohesiveness is very important to the employee, and its absence definitely acts as a source of stress, especially within that work group which has to constantly work in tandem so as to achieve its target. Second is inadequate social support. Social support from friends at work and co-workers can be very pleasant and relaxing. Total absence of social support or inadequate social support thus acts as stressor. The third is insufficient social networking. Social networking in the form of casual conversations with acquaintances or serious heart-to-heart conversation with close friends is essential for a healthy social working of an individual. If this social networking is not developed by an individual or has failed to keep it up to the mark, it might act as a stressor. The fourth is individual stressors. These stressors are related to the individual himself and do not have any role of the external factors. Number one, economic problems. Economic problems faced by an individual can be a major source of stress. This could be due to an inadequate salary or a poor management of funds. The second is hardiness. Hardiness is an individual's characteristics which enables him or her to deal with the stress without breaking under pressure. Those showing hardy characteristics have a high tolerance to stress in comparison to others who are non-hardy. Third is sudden career changes. Sudden and unexpected career changes can also result in stress, especially if they are not well planned and unwelcome. Finally, coming to the summary of this module, stress is a combination of physiological and emotional response to an external stressor. The stress which originates from the work experience and demands, is known as the job or occupational stress. Stress can be of two types. Eustress is desirable and positive stress, which is associated with pleasant events in life. Distress is a result of unpleasant experiences and events of life and results in negative stress response. People with type A personality are more prone to stress as compared to type B personality individuals. Worker well-being is a measure of overall desirability of life and includes physical, emotional, social aspects of life apart from the work life. There is a wide variety of sources of occupational stress. These can be extra-organizational stressors, organizational stressors, group stressors, and individual stressors.